Alright, so in this video I'm going to talk about some advanced console standard input-output that you can do with C++. So before we can work on GUIs, because we don't have a good understanding of C++ in general yet, all we have to do is, the only input-output we can do is to the command line. So this will show pretty much all you need for most uses. So the first thing we got to clean up, we got to tie up some loose ends. Let's look at comments real quick. So last video, I talked about single line comments, like you see here, but I forgot to mention multi-line comments. So if you look at this line of code, or this program, so let's compile this real quick. G++ wall comments out. It'll print out A is 5, and then it'll print out A, which is 5. But however, if you comment this out, so you comment by putting it's / star and then star / anything between this / star / will be a comment, so it'll be ignored. So like this, or if you like, you can do it this. Either way, anything that comes between them, as long as you can put your commented code in between these, it's fine. So if we save this, we compile this, as you can see, it no longer prints A is 5, and no longer sets A equals 5. So that's just how you do comments. Pretty simple. Now let's go into the meat of this video. Input and output. But let's talk about input. So I haven't made it yet. So let's look at input. So remember the structure of a C++ program. All right. So, like I said before, you can set variables, and you can print variables with cout, std cout, ::, x, and line. By the way, this operator right here, which kind of, like I said, it shoves x into standard output, that's called the insertion operator. You're inserting x into standard output. So, let's run this real quick. Oops, I compiled the wrong thing. Input v out. So 5. It just prints out. It uses the insertion operator to print out x. So if there's a cout, you might think maybe there's a cin. Well, you'll be right. So cin, it inputs whatever you want, and it stores it in some variable. When you input something, you need to store what was inputted for it to be used later. So let's do it right here. Let's set a variable x to be an integer, and let's input something, and we'll store that, what the user inputted, into x. So that command is stdcn, because we're using the cin in standard library. Then you use, so the last time we had the insertion operator, well now we're going to use this thing, which looks about the same, but it's, instead of less than signs, it's greater than signs. And this is called the extraction operator. You know, there's the insertion operator, but this is the extraction operator, x. So what this does is it extracts standard input and it stores it in x. It's kind of pretty intuitive. And then we can later, we can do some code here. So some code. And after, if you in some text editors, it will automatically put stars on each line. That is, you don't actually need these. You don't actually need this. I think for Vim, it automatically does that for C++, but you don't need stars in between. All you need is just the /* and */. So we can print out 2 times x. So this code will take input, we'll store that input into x, and then it'll print out 2 times x. Let's run that real quick. So notice immediately it doesn't print anything out yet. All you see is like a flashing cursor right here. Well, that's because it's basically asking for input. So let's give it an integer, -36. And then after you press enter, it takes whatever you inputted and stores it into x. And then it prints out 2 times x. So yeah, it's pretty simple. You just do cin, stdcn, and then you do the opposite of cout. So cout, you use this, the less than signs, the insertion operator, and now you're using the extraction operator into x. You're kind of taking cin and you're shoving it into x. and then now x has the value of whatever the user inputted, and you can use x as you would any other variable. So some flaws with this potentially. Let's say x is initially 5, right? Well, user can put anything, and it doesn't matter what you initially set x. However, what happens if the user inputs something that's not an integer? So, what about someone enters C++, which is not an integer? Oh, and I hit some arrow keys. I hit the arrow keys a couple times. That's how I generated this. Now notice C++ left arrow key is not an integer, and there's no way C++ can convert that into an integer. So instead, in some versions, it'll give you, some compilers, it might give you an error. Well, in this compiler, it looks at this, says, I have no idea what this is, I'm going to make it 0. And it stores that into x. So you want to be careful for when you're going to use cin, you want to make sure you have some kind of way to test if x is actually an integer, or if the user input was actually an integer. If you want to make an actual program. But if you're just making a program for demonstration purposes that some random person isn't going to mess up, then you don't need to check it. But if for any real purposes, you want to be careful because, like I said, anyone can input something that's not an integer and mess it all up. All right. So I would recommend you interact with cin and cout as much as you want. So, for example, you can interact with cin and cout and as much as you desire, and see what happens. So, right here, what do you think will happen if I do this? Given the character of p, and notice that it'll print out p plus 1, it'll automatically convert p into an integer because you can't do a character versus plus an integer. So convert p, or x, which is p, into its integer representation, which is 112, add 1 to get 113. However, if you got rid of the plus 1, recompile, it will print out as desired. So yeah, recommend you experiment with cout, cin, as much as you can, and different variable types to see how it works.